What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson, and happy game day, Giants fans. Are you excited? Are you just jumping out of your seat with joy to watch the Giants play the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday Night Football? Well, if you are, I'm not with you. I am dreading this game tonight. I'd rather sit and watch the World Series. The Yankees hopefully turn that series around. Instead, I'm going to be watching this Giants game, maybe flipping back and forth between the channels, but, this Giants game is looking like one that could get ugly pretty quickly if the Giants turn in another one of the offensive performances that they've had in the last two games against a really good Steelers defense. Now, obviously in our game preview that we posted over the weekend, we weren't super positive. We were pretty pessimistic going into this matchup, and I'm still feeling that way Monday afternoon, a few hours from game time. I think things could get ugly tonight. However, there is always the chance because if there's one thing that we know, Alex, it's that Daniel Jones is random. Okay, sometimes he'll look like the worst quarterback in the NFL, and then other times, out of nowhere, elite performance. So it's always possible that he bounces back tonight. Maybe the benching in the fourth quarter last week lit a fire under Daniel Jones, and he goes into this game and plays well. But if he doesn't, well, we do have to start having more questions, right? More questions getting answered, more conversations about his future as the Giants starting quarterback, because once again, that topic of discussion was brought up today in the media with ESPN's Jordan Rannon revealing some information that he got straight from the Giants locker room. Now, keeping it anonymous, he was, but basically saying something along the lines of, Daniel Jones is not playing with a short leash. He is the Giants starting quarterback, and the team still believes in him. However, that might be different if they had a better backup, namely Tyrod Taylor. So it almost becomes a question of, are the Giants just sticking with Daniel Jones because they are that down on the rest of their quarterbacks in that room? That's how it's starting to feel. So we're going to go ahead. We'll read off that exact quote for you from Jordan Rannon, his report this morning, and go ahead and react to it and discuss, will this team win more games with Tyrod Taylor as a starting quarterback? Honestly, Alex, we might have a winning record, in my opinion, if Tyrod Taylor was a starter, but I know that's obviously open to debate. How are you feeling today heading into this Monday Night Football matchup? What is your reaction to this Jordan Rannon report, and do you also miss Tyrod Taylor?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I mean, yesterday was fun, just watching football, just taking it easy, and not have to watch the Giants or work during the game. But we got a Monday Night Football game tonight, Giants Steelers, and listen, I think we're all pretty much in the same boat here, and that we kind of feel like we're in no man's land. I feel like it's World War I, the trench warfare is in the midst of it, and we're kind of just standing between the trenches, and we're like, all right, like what now except to get shot? Like this is kind of where we are, and this feels like there's a mortar shell coming towards us in week 8, and it's going to end our season. And listen, we're 2-6 now, 2-5. Probably going to be 2-6. The Steelers are no joke, guys. I mean, this is going to be a game where if the Giants cannot score points, their defense they're going to lay down and die. Like the defense cannot hang forever with a team like this. Russell Wilson balled out last week. Najee Harris balled last week. They have a strong offensive line. They have strong receivers. George Pickens is going to give Deontay Banks fit. It's going to be a tough matchup, man. Like, listen, this is not going to be one of those games where the Giants come out and demolish the Seahawks, where they have a really suspect defense and they have a lot of injuries, and they put a lot of pressure on Geno. I know obviously we don't have Kayvon. Aziz has been fine, but Brian Burns is still dealing with that groin injury. Dexter Lawrence, he had a couple days off, but I think he's fine. Our offensive line's decimated. We're not going to have Andrew Thomas as we had when we faced the Seattle Seahawks, and this is not one of those trap games. This is one of those we're just outmatched and outgunned in this one, and mainly because our offensive line is hurt, and Daniel Jones can't compensate for that, and he was not playing that great when we had a good offensive line. So now you take your left tackle away, and things only get worse. So talking about Tyrod Taylor, what he did last season when our offensive line was horrible, not even adequate or competent, he was just so bad. It was unwatchable most of the season. He still managed to generate explosive plays. He still managed to operate that offense. And, I thought bringing him back would have been a pretty easy decision. The Jets gave him that contract anyway to be the backup to Aaron Rodgers. But look, now you got players coming out saying, look, Daniel Jones is our starter. Why? Well, because Drew Lock's horrible and Tommy DeVito is also not very good. So that's the reason Daniel Jones is starting for this Giants team. Everything else is so much worse. That they kind of have to acknowledge the fact that, DJ's our best option, and that's sad. Our best option has helped score 13 combined points, and he was benched for one of those quarters, right, in the last 2 weeks. when you have players saying not unanimously, but anonymously to a reporter that they think that Tyrod Taylor might be starting if he was here right now, that should give you all the indication you need to know that their trust in Daniel Jones, their faith in Daniel Jones, I mean, if it's not already gone, it's diminished significantly. So you kind of get a sense of the locker room vibe there. They don't know. Obviously, if the players aren't feeling like he's the future, he's the present. I don't know how the front office is either.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've got our answers on how the front office feels through Hard Knocks this offseason. I mean, there was a lot shown in there that indicated the Giants were eager to move on from Daniel Jones. I do want to read, before we continue to discuss this report, Alex, I want to read the exact tweet that Jordan Rannon sent out this morning. So here it goes. A quick Giants QB update heading into Monday Night Football. Daniel Jones took all the first team reps this week at practice per sources. Not expected to be on a short leash despite getting pulled in the fourth quarter last week. Asked some players in the locker room and they weren't pushing for a change at QB. Jones is their starter. A few guys said it might be different if Tyrod Taylor was still on the roster. He's not. So it's Daniel Jones' team. And I do think that's interesting because this was my main takeaway, Alex. This report made it seem like the Giants locker room is rallying behind Daniel Jones simply just because they have no better choice. And if they had a comparable choice or a competitive choice, maybe they'd elect to rally behind that instead. And I think that you could argue Tyrod Taylor and his performance last season and looking at his career body of work, the way that he plays and the way that Daniel Jones plays, I think you could argue that the talent level is comparable enough to where if you're not buying into Daniel Jones, you could rally behind a guy like Tyrod Taylor. But like I said, this is really eye-opening to me. It feels like this Giants locker room is only standing behind Daniel Jones and supporting him because they have to, because they don't have a better choice. And I think that just opens up a can of worms here, Alex. We could talk about Daniel Jones and his performance. We've done that enough. We have talked about him endlessly. You guys know how we feel about him. But the main thing that we probably need to talk about here and point out as a takeaway from this is that Joe Schoen did make one crucial error this offseason. He did not address the quarterback position. We saw the Hard Knocks process play out. We watched every episode of that show. We overanalyzed every second of that series, right, Alex? But one takeaway that we had was, man, the Giants were eager to go get a young rookie quarterback, yet they somehow still didn't. So I think that they took this approach. We're either going to get the guy that we love in the first round, or we're just not going to get one, and we're just going to call it a day. I don't think that was the right idea. I think that maybe throwing a dart at the board and trying to get a quarterback in the middle rounds would have been a better idea. And I'll take it a step further. I think that signing a quarterback in free agency who can win games was a necessity that the Giants ignored. Bringing in Drew Lock on this 1-year, $5 million deal, I mean, is it not any more obvious that the Giants have zero faith in that guy? They do not trust Drew Lock to take snaps. They don't want him on the football field, and it seems like they feel the same way about Tommy DeVito. So why this offseason did this Giants team not push harder to re-sign Tyrod Taylor or to sign somebody else who has starting experience and has put up clutch wins under his belt? Because Drew Lock has not really done that. So if we're going to take one thing away from this, Alex, I think it's got to be that the Giants ignored the backup quarterback position this offseason, and it's really biting them in the ass right now. They need a better backup quarterback. They need somebody that they can confidently plug in if they lose all confidence in Daniel Jones. Who could that have been this offseason? Well, obviously, I've said this before. I pinpointed Sam Darnold as an attractive option going into free agency. The Giants never looked his way. They only looked at Drew Lock. I would have loved to bring back Tyrod Taylor. They didn't do that. Now he's signed to the New York Jets. And I think that Jameis Winston is another name that we brought up on this channel, Alex, and he just picked up a clutch win against the Baltimore Ravens for the Cleveland Browns. Meanwhile, the Giants quarterback room is Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and Tommy DeVito. And again, I've made these arguments about Daniel Jones doesn't give this team the best chance to win. Tommy DeVito won games last year. Drew Lock won clutch games on primetime last year. Let's give one of these guys a shot. I still stand behind that, but at the end of the day, do I really feel confident that these guys could go in and put up a winning streak? Could really change the course of this team and put us on a new direction? No, not necessarily, because the Giants didn't really add significant talent to this quarterback room. So I think that is my biggest takeaway from this, Alex. I want to hear your thoughts on that. Joe Schoen, for all the great work that he did in this year's draft and all the great work that he did with the salary cap space, one major mistake that he made, he did not properly and thoroughly address the backup quarterback position. Is that the same takeaway that you have from this report like I do?
I mean, yeah. We saw what Tyrod Taylor did last year, and then they brought in Drew Lock, and the immediate thought was, is Drew Lock going to compete with Daniel Jones in training camp? Is he going to have a chance to win that starting job? And obviously that was never a consideration. And I think the malpractice here, Anthony, is quite simple. The Giants went into this season with Daniel Jones coming off a torn ACL, having looked the way he did before the injury, and didn't bring in anyone that could even remotely compete with him. I think they let Tyrod Taylor go, not because he was too expensive, but because they didn't want anyone that was actually going to put Daniel Jones in a spot where he could lose that job, right? They wanted him to be the undeniable starter. Drew Lock was never going to compete with him, and they made that very clear from day one. I get they wanted to put the contract out there, but the thing is, after the Hard Knocks episodes, Anthony, when they're talking about, I would go up and trade for Jaden Daniels. Yeah, I would go get Drake May. They try to go do it. They clearly want to replace Daniel Jones, but then they don't bring in a backup who can push him for the starting job. I feel like that lacks logic. I feel like that's counterintuitive. I feel like that's kind of just doesn't make any sense, to be quite honest with you. If you want to replace your quarterback, you want to bring in a rookie, use DJ as a de facto bridge, but they don't want to push him for the starting job when you need to win football games this year because your jobs may be on the line, and if they didn't have such a good rookie class, they might have been. It's very much a big question mark. It's very much a big, why didn't you bring in someone to compete with him? Why didn't you bring Tyrod Taylor back, who looked way better than Daniel Jones looked at any point last season, winning games, throwing the deep ball, hitting Darius Slayton downfield? Darius Slayton, he hasn't seen a quarterback throw the ball that way since Daniel Jones' rookie season. And I think that's, 6 years ago now. So, listen, I'm not going to try to sit here the entire episode and rag on Jones because we've already gone past that, right? We already know the reality of the situation. However, watching Jameis Winston yesterday, Anthony, really, really upset me. It really did. And because he rallied the troops, man. He got the guys behind him. He went and led that team without Amari Cooper. I think Jerome Ford was hurt too. He led that team to a win over arguably the best team in football, right? Was it an anomaly? Probably. But it was Jameis Winston's first game, and he went out there and he basically did a perfect job. Threw with anticipation, made the right throws, got rid of the football, didn't make many mistakes, compensated for a lack of pocket protection at the times. And that to me was astounding, right? I was like, this guy is making next to no money. And Daniel Jones is making $40 million, and Jameis Winston's a better player, right? So I tweeted earlier today, Anthony, I don't know what you think about this. I don't think any of the quarterbacks in this upcoming rookie draft class are necessarily ready to start on day one. I think that Cam Ward's probably the closest of the bunch. Maybe Shedeur Sanders, depending on where he goes. I think it wouldn't be a bad strategy for the Giants to end the Daniel Jones era after this season, move on, sign a bridge like a Jameis Winston. Maybe he has a late career resurgence, kind of like a Sam Darnold, and he looks the part. What we saw yesterday was tremendous. Maybe they've signed him to be a bridge. They have him be that bridge for a young player, a young guy like a Sanders not that I want Sanders or a Ward. I like Garrett Nussmeier, but he's so inexperienced. I think he needs more than 1 year personally. But let's say it's Cam Ward. There's no one better to learn behind than Jameis Winston, who is a good dude, a decent player, and he's a locker room leader. If you're Cam Ward, you're a young guy, and you got all the arm talent in the world, you got all this quality, Jameis Winston might be a perfect guy to learn behind. You know what I mean? I think that could be a serviceable solution. Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, it compromises their ability to lose and get Arch Manning, but I'm not basing the Giants' future on getting Arch Manning because at every single turn, the Giants have found ways to win enough games to not be able to draft the best quarterback in the draft class, right? Every time. Betting our future on getting Arch Manning is a losing recipe because the Giants most likely are not going to get him unless he forces his way to the Giants. I don't think he's going to do that. So, at the time being, right now, Anthony, Winston seems to me to be a decent bridge option for a young player like a Cam Ward who can learn and assume that responsibility when the time is right. Not be thrown into the fire, not be doomed to torture like some other guys have been this year so far, or in the past. I just don't think he's ready. I don't think he's a Caleb Williams ready. I don't think he's a Jaden Daniels ready. I think he's more of like a Michael Penix ready. He's got all the talent, but he needs a little bit of time to learn how to be a pro, learn how to understand this offense, go into it in a seamless fashion, kind of like a Drake May situation. I know Drake May was thrown into the fire because of the injury to Jacoby Brissett, and then he just took the job. But Drake May has looked great so far. I wouldn't say great, but I say with what he has at his disposal, we've seen flashes of that talent. We've seen flashes of that quality. And I think that they've done a good job, being patient and, utilizing that time to usher in a new player. In some instances, I just don't think that a guy like Cam Ward or Sanders is ready just yet. But I do think you could use a guy like Winston as a bridge to prepare them for that reality and prepare them for that transition. I think that might be a way that the Giants can go about this in a more efficient way that sets us up for actual success.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way that they should have gone this past offseason. I think that I made my stance pretty clear going into the year that I wanted somebody else back there. I didn't necessarily want Daniel Jones to be handed the starting job. I wasn't certain how he would play coming off of a torn ACL. Would he be the same player? Would he take a step backwards? Would he struggle similarly to how he did last year? At the end of the day, I wanted the Giants to give him some legitimate competition for that starting spot, and they chose not to, which is what we've been complaining about for the last several minutes. So, yeah, I'm with you, Alex. I would love to see the Giants bring in a bridge quarterback like a Jameis Winston or somebody else. The only problem is, however, Alex, who is it? Is it Jameis Winston? This upcoming free agency class of quarterbacks is not very attractive. I've got it pulled up. Obviously, the top dog is going to be Sam Darnold. Very great chance he signs an extension with the Minnesota Vikings, or they franchise tag him. They'll probably franchise tag him because you know what? Even if they don't want to extend him, a team might want to trade for him, and franchise tagging him gives them the ability to do just that. Then after Sam Darnold, we're talking about guys like Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Jacoby Brissett, Taylor Heineke, Marcus Mariota, Drew Lock also heading back to free agency, and a bunch of guys who really, do they give you a better chance to win than what you have now? It's debatable. I don't know if the bridge is necessarily out there for the Giants. Justin Fields will be another one who opens into free agency. Maybe that's an intriguing option. And like you mentioned, Jameis Winston on a current one-year deal. Perhaps he is a target for the Giants. But my point being, looking at the free agency class, looking at the potential options, man, isn't it impossible to tell what those options are going to be this far out in advance? Like, I don't know which quarterback is going to be on the trade market. I don't know which veteran gets shockingly released at the start of the offseason. So you just don't know. And if you're the Giants, this ties into your point about Arch Manning or any of these other guys, because you're right. People are going to be commenting, wait it out for Arch, wait it out for this guy. You never know who is going to be available for the time period that you're planning ahead for. So whether you're saying, I want Cam Ward this offseason, what if he ends up being the number one overall pick and the Giants don't have the option to select him? Then what's your plan? You have to have multiple plans in place. And again, that underscores the entire topic of conversation. The Giants did not have multiple plans in place. They had one plan: get Daniel Jones healthy, get him on the field, get him weapons, get him to bounce back. But what if that didn't work out? What if he didn't bounce back? What was the backup plan? The Giants just didn't have one. They drew Lock, a backup that they don't believe in. They re-signed Tommy DeVito, another backup that they clearly don't believe in for one reason or another. The backup plan was always the best plan, and they don't have a backup plan. That's the biggest problem with this Giants regime. This is not the first time that they've failed to have a backup plan. Last year, they had a few offensive linemen that they brought in. They were like, okay, we're finally going to patchwork this thing and fix it. And then injuries occurred, it all fell apart, and they didn't have a backup plan. This year, at least, they seem to have some sort of a backup plan with the offensive line, but is it a good one? I don't think so. So backup plans have been the kryptonite of this Giants regime, in my opinion, and I think that is highlighted most greatly by their inability to plan ahead for what if Daniel Jones does not continue to be a good quarterback. So right now, we're looking ahead to the future, and it sucks. It's Monday night. We've got a game tonight, and it's October, but we are 2-5, likely 2-6, so we do have to look ahead to the offseason, and it's very unfortunate to do that right now. But if you are looking ahead to the offseason, you have to understand that when you look ahead to the offseason, you are literally looking into a shroud of darkness. You don't know what you're looking at because anything can change at any given moment. We're talking about maybe the Giants go out there and sign a bridge. Well, what if Daniel Jones gets hurt and his injury clause gets picked up? Now you don't have enough money to go out there and do those things that we're planning on. So you just don't know. Garrett Nussmeier seems like a great player. Some are saying he's going to be a first-round pick now, even though 3 weeks ago he was a third-round pick. Maybe he goes number 1 overall for all we know. Maybe he goes back to college because he only has 7 games started under his belt in his collegiate career. You literally just cannot plan ahead if you are a Giants fan or a general manager in the way that you want to. You have to take it day by day and week by week, and the number one thing you have to do is have backup plans. And like I said, that was the Giants' biggest problem, is that they didn't give themselves a backup plan for what if Daniel Jones plays poorly this season. They literally went into the year, we're like, we're going to make sure that Daniel Jones bounces back. We're going to give him every single weapon, every single tool necessary. What if none of that works, though? Because it doesn't seem like it's working. So what's the backup plan now? I don't know if they can make some sort of trade at the deadline. I don't think there's anybody out there on the open market to trade for. And I don't think that there are really many exciting free agents to go out and sign right now. So at the end of the day, this Giants team feels like it's kind of just floating on by for the rest of the year. But we'll see how it goes. Again, I said at the start of this episode, I think it's a perfect way to wrap my thoughts on this topic. Daniel Jones is the most random quarterback in the world. I wouldn't put it past him to somehow throw for 300 yards or 3 touchdowns tonight, just because that would be the last thing you expect from him. So we'll see how it goes tonight. But Alex, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts on all of the points that I just mentioned, in particular, the backup plan paradox. Let's just call it that. The Giants didn't have a backup plan at quarterback, and I think that's ultimately what's biting them in the ass right now.
I mean, it's just like going in circles in my brain over and over again. It's just like being in a torture chamber watching this team and this situation. I don't care if Daniel Jones has a great game tonight. Like, they still have to move on. You know what I mean? But the unfortunate truth is this, Anthony. Is there a world where the Giants are simply playing Daniel Jones because they know their probability of losing is actually greater? Like, is there a world where the Giants are like, yeah, like, he's just going to lose us games because he's not good? You know what I mean? The Giants have scored 13 points. The freaking Detroit Lions scored 52 points yesterday. Or something like that. 52? They scored 5 times as many points as we've scored combined in the last 2 weeks. In one game. They scored twice as many points in the first quarter as we've scored in the last 2 weeks combined. We are talking about a Giants team that is incapable in so many ways. I mean, the truth is simple. If there's anything that we can sit here and just rag on Joe Shane for, it's the lack of preparation to have a backup plan at quarterback. They are going into these games knowing that they're probably going to lose. Knowing it. Full well knowing that they're probably going to lose, right? I don't care how many rah-rah bullshit speeches they give us, how many we're going to hold ourselves accountable and we're going to try to win and we're going to turn this thing around. Why can't we go on a hot stretch? Because they're not good enough. They don't have a good enough quarterback. And if you have a bad quarterback in the NFL, you are cooked. You're screwed. There's no team that is doing well right now with a bad quarterback. Even the Jets are doing bad with Aaron Rodgers. Even they've managed to mess up a situation that seemingly should have been substantially better. The Buffalo Bills are a good team. Look what the Miami Dolphins did. I mean, they lost, but their offense was head and shoulders better. And Tua, I don't even think is a great quarterback. I think he's good. I think he's a good quarterback. And he's coming off a concussion, right? A really bad concussion. He came in there and scored points, right? Like, that's crazy to me. I mean, the Patriots with Jacoby Brissett just beat the Jets. Like, are you kidding me? Right? I mean, am I crazy? I mean, look, Dak Prescott looked horrible in the first half yesterday. He ended up bouncing back and scoring 2 touchdowns. When have we ever seen Daniel Jones, aside from that one anomaly of an Arizona Cardinals game where they had a horrible defense, when have we ever seen Daniel Jones throw 2 interceptions in the first half, bounce back in the second half, and make it a close game? I cannot recall a single moment that's ever happened, aside from that Arizona game against a horrible team. That's just where we are. I mean, listen, Anthony, I'm beating the dead horse. I know I am. And I can't stop myself because I'm just so upset and so frustrated. But when all is said and done and we look at this team after the season comes to an end, there's one thing that is going to be certain. There's going to be a new quarterback next year. There has to be a new plan, a new strategy, a new situation, a new everything, a new narrative. Jones has got to be gone. They got to find a bridge. They got to find a rookie, someone to develop. I don't care. And look, Anthony, I can sit here and I can have hope in a team that has a young player learning, developing behind the scenes, waiting for the chance to strike, right? I can sit here and be optimistic about that. We're seeing good things in practice. He's taking reps with the ones. He's getting in garbage time. He's getting in there, making a couple nice throws. We'll pick those apart. I can get behind that. I can rally behind that. What I can't rally behind is being in no man's land. I can't sit here and be optimistic about no man's land. I can talk good about some of these rookies, suggest that they're trending in the right direction at some specific positions, But it doesn't matter how good Andrew Phillips is. It doesn't matter how good Dexter Lawrence is. It doesn't matter how good Brian Burns is. And it doesn't matter how good Malik Neighbors is if you don't have a quarterback that can do the little things right and hit on the explosive plays. It does not matter. You have the best defensive player in football in Dexter Lawrence, a generational talent. And this Giants team is 2-5 with nowhere to go. That's how important a quarterback is. And the Giants did not prepare for that reality, that Daniel Jones may fucking suck again. They didn't prepare for it. And the fact that they failed to prepare for that is on Joe, Shane, and Brian Daboll. They have to be accountable for that. And they're not going to get fired. I don't think they will be. I don't think they necessarily should be. But if there's anything that I'm going to sit here and tell you is that they are accountable for failing to prepare. And failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So we know that, and they've done that, and all we can do is hope they don't make that same mistake twice, because you in the NFL, you're GM, you're head coach, you cannot make the same mistake twice. This is a catastrophic mistake.
Couldn't have said it better myself. You're right. I mean, listen, if you make the same mistake twice, you're not given an opportunity to make the same mistake a third time in the NFL. So, and listen, we know that the Giants are not planning on making any changes to the front office or to the coaching staff this offseason, and that's great, but that's the expectation in October. Things can change between now and January for sure. You never know how things are going to go throughout the course of an NFL season, which is why I say, even though I don't expect the Giants to win tonight, Alex, this is like the perfect game for them to win. Somehow, some way, this is probably going to be the one that they sneak out and somehow find an unlikely victory. It's totally possible. I can't put it past Daniel Jones. Sometimes he looks like the worst quarterback in the NFL, and then the next week, all of a sudden, he's showing flashes of elite potential. Maybe, again, he got a fire lit under him tonight, and he's going to go out and play his ass off. I hope so. I want to see the Giants win football games at the end of the day more than anything. So whether it's because Daniel Jones balls out or if it's because the defense balls out, I just want to see this Giants team get back in the win column. So I'm hoping to see that tonight. I know all of you are hoping for the same as well. And of course, we're going to be posting all throughout the game on social media on Fireside Giants and on my personal Twitter. And Alex, so go ahead and follow us both. And stay tuned because we'll probably have a post-game reaction either tonight or tomorrow morning. Very excited to react to tonight's game regardless of how it goes. And again, continue to preview the rest of the season right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you listen on Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.